Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Leading in the Digital Era. This conversation has taken many forms throughout my career, and I've been blessed enough to have the opportunity to work in very large and mid-sized organizations that have given me the exposure to what it might be to be like an IT leader, where maybe one size fits all or maybe not. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about how to scale an organization dramatically reshapes the expectations and influences the execution style of its top leader. Joining me, I have three exceptional CIOs I've known for a very long time, who I'm very honored that they're here with join us today. So whether you're supporting local operations where one missing help desk agent can shake up your day, or you're orchestrating a complex tech ecosystem across multiple business units, this conversation will offer insights on how CIOs adapt, deliver, and lead across every size of and structure of an organization. So joining us first is one of my three dear friends here. I'm going to introduce Michael Pompey.
Hey, how's it going, Rob?
Welcome, Michael. Michael's the Chief Information and Transformation Officer at Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania. His career path is anything but typical, sitting in a juvenile probation with a foundation in electrical engineering and criminology. Michael found his calling in harnessing technology to uplift communities and drive meaningful change. At Girl Scouts, Michael leads transformation initiatives that blend technology, data, and strategy support over 40,000 girls and volunteers across 9 countries. His efforts have modernized critical operations, from optimizing iconic $2 billion cookie program to advancing STEM and leadership platforms that inspire the next generation. Outside the office, Mike is a proud robotics dad, a dedicated family and passionate advocate for youth development. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here finally, my friend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Joining us at a very early hour, our earliest guest ever as from a time of day perspective, is R.C. Woodson. Welcome, R.C.
Hey, good morning from Alaska. Thanks
From
for
Alaska,
having me.
where it's getting warmer up there, and looking forward to having some guests visit him in a few weeks out here. But R.C. is a CIO of Bristol Bay Native Corporation with over 30 years of digital experience, leading IT strategy, cybersecurity, and digital transformation. His success has driven technology initiatives across multiple industries and an active board member supporting workforce development and cybersecurity in Alaska. RC is known for his pragmatic approach to aligning technology with business goals and his passion for mentoring the future IT leaders. I've sat in a numerous number of RC sessions where he's transformed my thinking on how IT approaches its relationship with the business. His leadership blends technical expertise with a deep commitment to community, impact, and resilience. Welcome, RC.
Thank you, Rob.
And filling out our panel today is John Regula. Welcome, John. John's the Chief Information Officer of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where he leads digital transformation initiatives across 38 offices, serving over 6,500 residents. With more than 35 years in IT experience, including 20 years in CIO roles within health and human services and public sectors, John focuses on aligning people, process, and technology to drive operation efficiency and innovation. Since joining Bucks County in 2020, he's championed the modernization efforts that enhance government, services, and community organization. John has a master's degree in organizational management and 2 undergraduate degrees in IT. Welcome, John.
Thanks very much for having me, Rob. Great to be here.
Well, I appreciate you all, and we spent a lot of time having conversations much like this, but not from this specific perspective. So let's get us going with just a real simple statement I'm going to throw out there, a question out there. What does leadership look like in your environment? And Mike, we'll start with you if you don't mind.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. So it's an interesting question because it's not necessarily one that's really, really simple. So for me, leadership, it's hybrid. I'm kind of what you call a cowboy CIO. I don't necessarily rule from spreadsheets. I got to necessarily have my hands in the technology at some time. So depending on the season, depending on the issue, I'm sometimes mixing it up with either a vendor or my technical staff, as well as leading conversations at the executive suite. So to me, it's a hybrid. So I'm not necessarily a cosmopolitan CIO, but that's kind of the way I've liked it.
Thanks, Mike. John, how about you? What does leadership look like in your environment?
In public life, leadership takes on a different form because public life is different than a typical board CEO president where one direction sets the day. At the county, there are many different elected officials, each having their own say over their own elected office and position. So leadership is more based on consensus building and alliance building than it is carrying out a direction from a board or a CEO.
So politics, even at the IT leadership role in your organization as well.
No doubt.
RC, so please share with us and please include a little bit of the scale of Bristol Bay, because I think you're rounding out the top end of the size of an organization here.
Okay. Leadership in my organization is pretty decentralized. I have a large organization spread out across the country. I'm sitting at the parent company. We have multiple subsidiary companies with their own leadership structures. So it's a very collaborative leadership. It's very strategic, almost an advisory. Basically nose in, hands out. But at the end of the day, it's really, really strategic and collaborative, if I had to just explain it in a nutshell.
I like strategic and collaborative, and I think that works at every level. But when we're talking about the size and scope of an organization, so RC, if we could start with you on this one, how do you find yourself blending an operational triage with an executive vision, especially when you're looking at the scale of Bristol Bay?
First of all, we always start at our company goals. What are we trying to do? At the end of the day, here are the goals that are set for the company. Here are the actions and activities to meet those goals. So whenever I'm triaging, I'm normally called in when something is not going quite right. First thing I do is find out what's going on. I get a team together. We determine what actions need to take place. We determine what we want to look like when we're done, whatever that issue is. So again, from a coaching, advisory, and almost a GRC perspective under governance, risk, and compliance, all those rules come into play when we set our goal for whatever problem we're trying to fix. So I lead by basically bringing a team together, determining what we need to do, and then also providing resources. And those resources may be vendor resources, they may be internal resources, they may be financial resources. But at the end of the day, my leadership in the entire organization across the enterprise is leader, advisor, helper.
So that and that's interesting, and I wonder how that might play a little bit differently in organization size of Michael and John. So Michael, if you would share with us the blending operational work between executive and your.
Sure. So my environment, honestly, in a lot of the environments that I've been, it has been sort of that collaborative force multiplier, and that you've had to sort of hold expertise in a variety of different areas, tech just being one of them, as well as whatever the mission focus activities are that are driving you towards your goal, and blending all of that together. So oftentimes it's, knowing the business end just as well as knowing the tech end to sort of bridge some of the conversations and help support some of the thinking. So that's kind of how, we approach a lot of the things that we do, right? They're collaborative. The way I like to look at it is that my tech projects are actually your business investment. And so that, if I'm doing my job right, you are having the conversation related to the investments because they advance your goals on your side of the organization. And that's kind of how I know I'm in the sweet spot if I hear you talking about the work as well.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Great perspective on that business IT relationship. John, do you have any insights on the strategy and operation balance that you have to keep?
So I'm going to take this in just a little bit of a different direction, because although I am blessed with some strategic initiatives, in my world, the urgent keeps getting in way of the important. And how do you deal with that in life when, as a CIO, you are trying to manage to strategic objectives, but with the staff of 50, servicing 2,500 employees and 650,000 citizens, there are always challenges of the day that seem to get in the way of all of the wonderful strategic initiatives. So a takeaway I would suggest to the CIOs out there is to work towards team member empowerment. It is so absolutely critical that your team members know your priorities and are able to execute on them at the micro level. That doesn't mean you micromanage. That means you give them parameters to work into and large range of motion within those guide rails to be able to operate and effectively handle the situations that come up. So you can keep the urgent tasks of the day at the lowest level of operational effectiveness so they don't keep coming to your desk.
So I love that perspective, John, and especially in an organization of your size. We joked when we talked about this, the four of us, when we were at this conference we just left. We talked about not knowing who your help desk people are, who's sitting on your help desk every day, right? And RC, an organization of your size, it'd be impossible. And I know I've met some great leaders in your org, like Kim and others, and you have some great leaders that are working within your organization, part of your team. But if you had to find out who on the help desk didn't make it to work that day in Kim's organization, that's not information that might make it to in the size organization to your desk. But have, John and Mike, if you have a bad traffic day in your towns, what happens, right? So how do you guys handle that component of operational efficiency? And RC, I'm going to ask you to just hit this a little bit from the beginning, because I think as we talk to Mike and John, it might be a little bit different of approach. So RC, how are you handling that operational awareness?
I have a very, very close relationship with my IT managers at the subsidiary level. Anytime we have something called exception reporting. If everything's going good, I probably won't get a phone call. As soon as something goes left, I'll get a call. I'm very aware because I trust the IT managers at the subsidiary level to keep me informed. And fortunately, Rob, yes, you've met a couple of our folks and they're really good. I do quarterly check-ins with my subsidiary IT leaders. And I also have an open door policy, open phone policy to where they can call me at the drop of a hat. So, and I respond as fast as I possibly can. So I don't have the down in the weeds view, but I do have the down in the weeds reporting. So that's how I handle it across our enterprise.
So John, thank you, RC. John, how about by you?
So one of the challenges you can have with a smaller organization is chain of command jumping. So I do have wonderful line item managers, in desktop support, in network management, network administration, WAN support, apps dev, things of that nature. But because we are a 50-person IT shop, the staff of those areas may find me in the hall or pose a question to me, or that may not have made it through their manager, or the issue of taking time off or needing to attend to an appointment. They may have jumped a few levels to actually just notify me and try to carry that out. So it's really important, even with a smaller organization, to be able to ensure that managers are actively involved in the job of managing their staff, and you're not supplanting that just because of convenience or your availability to staff. I think that really works towards an organization that can communicate effectively at the management level, because managers need to know what's happening inside of their units.
Okay, that's good. That's sound advice from the org structure side. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, as I was interested, as I've listened to, RC, he said the proverbial thing that all of us who've ever saddled up to work in IT know, that the best compliment you'll ever hear is nothing at all, right? So if you hear nothing at all, you've done your work. So for me, in smaller organizations, it really is knowing, where is the wheel that's going to squeak coming from, and having your ear open for it. Having close relationships with the folks that are, on the front lines, behind the trigger when anything goes is definitely key, because you want to know about something before someone else has to tell you about it. That's always sort of been my mantra, is like, I want to know before the CEO knows. So please just let me know what's going on. That way we can either have a solution before technology and try to move things. And if you can't, be able to communicate well so folks aren't left in the dark. I think sometimes that's the key. Sometimes, early in my career, I would sort of laser focus and try to deal with whatever the issue or the solution is. And you're trying to hold people off that and don't bother me, I'm trying to fix it, which just lets their mind wander, create all kind of hamster energy. Whereas if you can communicate, let folks know what the status is, where you're going, where the solution, and when the next update can be, you can kind of hold them off at bay for a little while. So those have been some of the, my go-to dance moves, as it will, when situations like that pop up.
So, and thanks, Mike. So When you work in large organizations, small organizations, the opportunity to get approval on things sometimes take different paths, right? Mike and John, you might be able to impact change. Well, John, maybe not with the political environment that you're in, but impact change a lot quicker than RC. But RC might have different resources available to them that gives them the opportunity to make a different type of change. I had an interesting conversation with a Fortune 50 CISO, and we talked about just the sheer size of alerts and information that goes to him and his CIO regularly because of the tools they have in place, where from a budgetary perspective, you might have that available to you. But all three of you are dealing with AP and AR every day. There might be bigger numbers than your AP and AR, but you still have the same business things you have to do with less. So how do you use for managing change and then dealing with organizations your size? Can you guys share a tactic that worked well in transforming your organizations in its organization your size? And Mike and John, I'd like to just start with you guys here in that order, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I think for me, one thing, because I've worked at a number of sort of, mission forward organizations in my career, like you mentioned before, right? From juvenile justice all the way here to the Girl Scouts and different organizations in between. And in every single one, there was no infinite resources. And in fact, no one has infinite resource, right? So you always sort of have to, kind of manage by what I would always sort of call the Pompeii triangle of the truth, where you've got the three corners and, you've got price, time, and what you want, and you only get to pick two. But having that be part of a business conversation related to decision, why we're at where we're at, and then driving from that perspective is always sort of help. But you're correct. We've got the exact same pressures, the exact same challenges as any other organization. And, in the environment in which we operate, we're facing the same stressors. So how do we use our nimbleness to an advantage? And I think for us, it really, and my organizations, has been about solution before the technology, right? Is there a tool? Is there something currently in-house that gets us 80% of the way there without necessarily having to go buy something else? Can I skill somebody up? Can I train? As a Star Wars fan, I used to have this thing called, the Sith principle, the rule of two, that there always had to be two people that knew how something core was running at any given time, just in case something happened that, you wouldn't have a critical failure because you had that other person on deck. So a lot of times it was sort of keeping those balls in the air, juggling a little bit, if you will, to make sure that my organizations, but more importantly, our missions were supported adequately.
Michael, thank you. And I'm very eager to find out tomorrow how our producer, John Palinkis, works in the Mike Pompei Sith rule of two into our show notes. I wonder how quickly that's going to take off. It's going to be our new hashtag.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll do it with lightsaber focus.
Lightsaber focus. Here we go. We're not going to go there. I didn't wear my Giants hat today for you, but John, tell me about you and
yeah. So you mentioned AR, AP, all the different lines of business operational stuff that we get to have in common across sizes of organization. When you said that to me, I'm going to come to my bring the audience to a quote from Peter Drucker. In so far as saying it is makes no sense to do efficiently that which should not be done at all. And the reason I want to focus on that from a CIO perspective, because we're always all about RPA, doing things, macros, saving time, being able to script things, use automation to make things so darn efficiently. I would suggest that the first question you have to ask anything that you're doing in business is, should it be done at all? And I think that really allows you to focus your attention on things that matter and to really distance yourself, both in time, energy, and all other resources, monetary, from those things that do not advance business objectives, do not further the goals of your organization, or do not even enable a line person to be effective or efficient in their job. So the first question is, should you be doing it, before you even ask the efficiency question? And that's the way we try to approach it here with our resources when we look at all different operational lines of business.
John, thank you. And RC, as I get to you, I want to ask you a little bit different spin on this question, considering the scale and rate of change you might have. But in the enterprise setting, especially your size, how do you get major buy-in for the initiatives, but while maintaining efficiency as you innovate?
It is definitely a juggling act, Rob. I want to go back to what Mike said earlier about having a major dance move. And anytime you're affecting change, the first step is to gain buy-in. Okay, so my dance move is, hey, getting everybody together, having clear communication as to what we're trying to do, why we need to do it. And then I go back to Mike, you brought it up earlier, that triple constraint: people, time, and money. And in some organizations you can only have two. I think I'm fortunate because my executive leadership here is very good, and they give me all three. And I've been in other organizations in the past where you did have to pick two. So to answer your question, Rob, a lot of communication, a lot of participation in the business units. I like to think that I'm a business person that does technology. Okay. With business-led IT, we used to call it shadow IT. Okay, we no longer call it shadow IT. We call it business-led IT. So I make sure that I'm down in the business units, those ones that are within reach. And I preach this to my IT leaders in the subsidiary companies. If you don't know what the business is doing, they're not going to buy into the technology projects. So that's my method.
And I love the business-led IT. It's another great term. Hopefully we'll grab that in the notes as well. So RC, especially working, and I know some of the organizations you've had and the impact you've had in them. Do you tailor your leadership and strategy to fit your organization's culture and maturity and size?
I do. We've had some conversations, Rob. I grew up in military IT, where you dot the I's and cross the T's. Everything was very stringent. I came out to the private sector back in 2007. I definitely had some growing to do. I had some learning to do. I had to adapt to how we do things out here in private sector. So yes, I'm definitely a chameleon when it comes to moving through, business units and different lines of business. You have different cultures. I've got oil field guys, or people, where it's a little bit rougher environment. Then I have folks working in technology. I have folks working in the seafood industry. I have folks working in, construction. So I have to tailor my language to that industry. So yes, it's my desk changes speeds every 15 minutes on some days.
And before I jump to the other two guys, but knowing the leadership you've had in both the military, and thank you for your service, by the way, and other areas as well, is there something you had to unlearn in order to be effective at what you do, especially at scale?
I wouldn't say unlearn, Rob, but learn. I had to learn a lot more patience. Um, Half my life I spent, like I said, in the military technology environment. In my last job, I was responsible for 265 locations around the world. So there was no sleep. I come out here, and my first private sector job, I was in banking, where I had to worry about one organization with 12 locations, and that was a change. I had to slow down very much. I could tell you a story about my second here at Bristol Bay. He actually worked with me at my first private sector job, and he tells me he likes me a lot better now.
Well, we still love you either way, so I appreciate you. John, do you want to tackle this one?
I think what we have to remember is there may be a culture inside of an organization that we're all trying to serve, but that culture is made up of individual people. And really trying to understand the people perspective of the products and services you're delivering for them is absolutely key to your success. Because not all those with power in an organization are represented on an organizational chart. They may be sitting in a cubicle with a network unto themselves that you need to ferret out and find those people and align with them as individual users, bottom up support building for innovation and change, more so than top down. So you can't forget the unnamed, somehow unforgotten voices that are sitting outside of your organizational chart that really do make up the ethos of your organization. When you reach out, you need to reach out broad, wide, and deep to fully understand how your innovations are being adopted, accepted, and what opportunities might exist for further innovation in your company.
That's great, John. And do you balance looking for those innovations versus dealing with the emergencies that keep the lights on daily? Do you feel you have enough time to get to those innovations regularly?
No, there's not enough time. There really isn't. And you will certainly walk out of here at 5 o'clock or so and wondering if there is, because you're through dinner and whatever, you're still thinking about the opportunities you may have missed or the emergencies that kept you out of the way. But you come back the next day and you keep trying to advance a strategic objective while dealing with the concerns of the day.
Well, I love the lean towards tenacity. Thank you, John. Michael, how about you?
Yeah, no, listen, I love the thing that John brought out, right? Because sometimes we make the mistake and think culture is this static thing, but it is made up of people, right? And we are the people that it's also made up of. And of course, my mind jumps to everything. But if you think about sort of like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, that the thing you measure is also the thing you affect. It's the same way with culture, and that knowing that my actions, my view, right, my sentiment will also affect the culture around me. Was one of the key things I had to learn. And one of the things I had to unlearn is having to prove myself the expert. And one of the things that, it would take me some time to finally get this under my belt is that I didn't have to be the smartest person in the room. I did not have to be the one to come up with the idea. It didn't even have to be my idea. But my value was being the multiplier and getting it executed. And once I was able to sort of be fine with that, right, letting go of the tools that got me here, to embrace tools to take me to the next level, that's when different powers showed up, different spheres of influence opened up when I was able to do that and see that, which allowed me to do the next things that I needed to do to go where I wanted to go. So that was one of the key lessons in my career that, again, no one could have told me that that's how it would have come about, but it was something that I had to experience and go through. But once I did and learned that lesson, the world's got a very funny way of bringing you the next chapter in life when you're ready for it. And so that's what I would say to all leaders, is just to be open to embrace that change, because it's on its way, whether you want it to or not.
Perfect.
Rob, can I chime in as well? I want to co-sign what Mike just said, because that's one of the things that was difficult for me, walking into the room and not being the expert, because the way I grew up was, hey, you need to know exactly what's going on. You need to be the expert. So one of the things in a previous organization, we actually put together what was called a business and technology action team. We went away from the IT steering group because my leadership didn't want anyone steering IT. So they basically wanted business first, technology second, to enable the business, and actions that needed to be taken care of in collaboration of a team. So they call it a BTAC. And that model helped me kind of take my hands off the steering wheel and allow other people outside of technology to actually kind of steer. I go back to the word, but internally kind of set the pace and say, hey, these are the things we need in our departments. These are the things that are working. These are the things that are not working. So I kind of co-signed exactly what Mike was saying, and that led to some successes.
The words mean everything. RC, I was in the room when you first did your presentation on moving away from steering committee, and then you had business transformation committee, and then where you are now. And I think just the words and how you present IT to the business changes, and you hit it well there. I think we all huddled after that maybe that was 4 or 5 years back. But it's a great approach in creating that synergy with the business. So,
if I can chime in on that a little bit there, Rob, I do want CIOs to give themselves a little bit of grace here, because we've been at this business transformation and business synergy and strategic direction for a very brief period of time. As I hear these discussions going on, I do want to say congratulations to all CIOs as a discipline for making the fight and making it to the C-suite and making to where we can actually talk strategically. When I started 40 years ago, data processing was a thing. That was the department I was hired into. And we were nowhere near a C-suite level of influence. We processed transactionally records. So a 40-year career later, I am absolutely thrilled that we can sit around on a podcast LinkedIn stream here and actually talk about how we can move the business forward. And that really is a kudos to all of the people who are fighting the fight and making their innovations and their proudness, not just for IT, but for business to be known and effective inside the business.
Well, thank you for your service, John. I
No,
appreciate you doing that for us way back then.
Yeah, definitely great words. One of the examples that I show is that, the other three C levels, they've been working together since the pyramids. You had the CEO, CFO, and COO. They've been working together that long. What was it, mid 80s? All of a sudden we show up out of the basement, with a pocket protector and a beanie hat. And we're like, we want to walk into the C-suite, and they're like, hey, what are you guys doing here? We're your technology guys. So we are fighting a good fight, John.
It's been a short fire, John. I don't know if that data processing department you reported up into MIS, and if you think about the evolution of the roles at the C-suite, the one that transformed the most is the CIO, and we're the newest role. I think the CFO has still been counting the same things on their Abacus or SAP HANA S4, whatever we're going to call it now, many years later. But we've tried to have to embrace that change, right? We're the ones that look at the rate of change of technology grows quicker than we can ever keep on top of, especially in the roles we're talking about here, having to deliver value to the business. And there's so many ways I can go with this, but we only have a limited amount of time today. We can do another show.
Mm-hmm.
We could hit a little bit of a culture component and just keep playing on that. And I don't think you're doing it alone. So every person counts, big or small. How do you keep things running when you're in short, when you're short a team member or waiting on a vendor in an organization your size? Let's start with you on this one, John.
I like the idea that was mentioned with Mike out there, and always having a backup, right? You have a primary and a backup point person for everyone. You may not have a backup vendor. Your core vendor may be a key resource that you have to rely upon. But you do have some levers to pull with, by enabling them to see the urgency inside of in public life. Their misgivings might be more known than hidden, so you can leverage that well. But know your resources ahead of time. The worst time to try and pick a date is the day of the prompt, right? So you don't want to do that. You get what's available, and it may not be to your liking. So one of the best things to be able to do is to have a deep deck of resources that you can rely upon, whether that is through vendor relationships or through staff augmentation companies that you may already have a pre-existing relationship that you could pull off the bench if you need to make that happen. So don't box yourself into a corner, and have several resources available when those constraints come into play that you can leverage.
So just John, let's just hit those resources a little bit. How do you approach mentorship then with those resources, and what does it look like in practice with you?
The greatest thing to have mentorship is to allow that communication to happen ongoing and not just situationally. So it is not just, oh, here's an urgent need, let's try and cultivate that relationship and make it happen. It's ongoing touch points, and that really keeps the cadence of the opportunity alive. Quick example, specifically, for cybersecurity type incidents, I don't have a staff of hundreds to respond to an incident, but I do have organizations that I allow to come in and do normal cadence and review and network activity through an engaged pen test or through an engaged discussion, so that if I have to leverage those firms, they know me, they understand me, and they can respond quickly to an engagement versus getting something cold out of a cold call, trying to develop that relationship when the need arises.
Cool. Michael, you?
Yeah, it's interesting, John, and hearing your response echo, a lot of the lessons I learned, in my career, when I was doing work with county government in Florida and then in Philadelphia. And that, the funny thing is, we never ever seem to have money, but we always seem to have time. No one ever had money to do it, but you always seem to find time to do it again when you did it wrong the first time. And so it was interesting in that, having that sort of collection of procured vendors, right, freelancers and folks that I could go to, and the event that something came up, whether it was unspent funds or an emergency that needed you to be able to respond and be nimble, was sort of the garden I would continually cultivate, right, making sure I always had someone on deck in the event that I could use them in a way that was unforeseen, was really helpful, particularly when you've got resources that could go up and down and be very volatile as related to some of the funding streams coming in from the feds and state, which I would imagine, for those CIOs that are working at state and federal agencies or whatever, facing some of the administrative changes, those are some of the things that they've had to deal with. I think the other pieces for me also related to, okay, how do I make sure I'm keeping my axe sharp? RC gave us a really good example in one of his talks about, if you've only got, 5 hours to cut down trees, spend 4 of it sharpening your axe so you can go through them a lot quicker. And some of the things that we would do would be exactly that. We would have certain days out of the week where, you'd be mentoring staff. And it's like, okay, I expect you to spend 4 hours honing your craft, right? Learning something new, right? Learning something that could be applicable, that could make you more efficient. So for us, knowing that you had small resources, knowing that you needed to make sure that your teams were lean, as well as a little bit boutique, because it takes a special kind of person to kind of ride in that environment. And if you're not prepared mentally for what that can look like, you could not only strain yourself, but strain those around you. So being very selective regarding, how you brought people on and how you supported them were some of the things that, I also would learn going through this.
Thank you, Michael. So RC, let's get this over to you.
All right.
A
So,
lot here.
I kind of put this under my large umbrella of succession planning. But I started, as soon as a person comes on into the organization, I sit down, talk to the leaders, I talk to what the career path looks like. We have a couple different programs that we use. We use something called cross training, okay, to where an individual may be a network engineer and doesn't have a lot of security background. Right, we'll have them work with the assigned security analyst. That career path also walks them through sitting behind the person in front of them, and maybe not sitting behind them, but maybe sitting next to them. I have IT managers that are working directly with IT directors. I have IT directors working directly with vice presidents of IT. I have vice presidents of IT working directly with senior vice presidents of IT, so they can see what the next step up is. As far as from a continuity perspective, we definitely have 2 layers of operation. Okay, you have to these days. Things are moving so fast. So we do have primaries and alternates, and in that vein, I definitely have right hand and left hand people that can do my job when I'm not in the office.
So how are you mentoring those people that are doing your job when you're not in the office?
Lots of communications and lots of care and feeding. I have a person that is sitting in a high level IT director position, and I share a lot of the things that come across my desk with that individual. I make sure they understand how strategy works. I make sure they understand how the business works. I make sure they understand what the subsidiaries, do and how they operate. But at the end of the day, it's all teaching. It's all teaching. It's like being the bigger. I'm the oldest of 7 boys, so I've been teaching, folks coming along with me for a long time. So I use that same tactic and just come in and say, hey, this is what the business is asking us to do. This is how long we have to do it. This is how much money they're giving us, and this is how many people they're giving us. Let's make it happen. Let's bake the cake.
Great. All right. So working on our last question here, in the essence of time, we're going to start with Michael. But Michael, if people want to find you, is the best place to find you on LinkedIn?
Best place to find me is on LinkedIn. The other best place to find me is on mountain bike trails in and around Philly. So if you're ready to ride the rough, that's where you're going to find me at.
Well, I've read that post, and it's a great post too. But one day we'll get on the trail on a bike together, not just a hike.
You got it, sir.
Michael, guys. So, what is the one leadership lesson you'd share with someone stepping into their first CIO role today? So, Michael, let's start with you.
Wow. One, thank you for that question. That's a big question. That's powerful. So the one leadership lesson I would tell a CIO stepping into their first role today, because you've probably heard some of the things during conversation, things are going to feel uncomfortable. You already know that your business and expertise and your technology expertise got you here, but now you're going to need something else, and it's going to feel unfamiliar, and you may struggle. Don't fight that. That is growth. You're going to learn the rest of the things too that will make you successful and make you better able to move your organization mission. Just give it time and give it effort, just like you did everything else, and you'll get there.
I love that, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, John, besides LinkedIn, if you're comfortable with that already, is there anywhere else we can find you?
I'm absolutely comfortable with LinkedIn and very
Yes.
comfortable finding you in there, in and around enjoying all of the wonderful parks and scenery in Bucks County is where you're absolutely going to find me. So come and join and celebrate nature here in Bucks County with us.
And take a hike with John.
Right, please.
So, John, what about you? Advice to someone stepping into the first CIO role?
Be humble. Please know that everybody you meet is going to know something that you don't. And it is absolutely important. It is a sign of extreme strength for you to accept that wisdom humbly and to allow the help to come when help is offered. It is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of immense strength that when you are overwhelmed, overworked, and stressed, and somebody is offering to come and mentor you or to help you along the path, please accept that. Both of you are going to grow from that relationship. For a newly mentored CIO, I absolutely encourage you to peer network and reach out to those. I assure you, those who are more seasoned would absolutely embrace an opportunity to help you along that journey because they're going to learn something from you too. So please allow peer networking, connect and reconnect again and build those relationships. They, more than technology, is what will carry you into your future.
Wonderful. And John, thank you. Someone mentioned to me only earlier today, Bucks County isn't the end, but you can see it from there. However, if we're going to talk about the real end, let's throw it over to Alaska for this discussion. It's the other end, not the end, RC. It's the other end of this country, which would say, RC, where can we find you besides LinkedIn?
Well, you may have to travel quite a ways, but you're going to find me on the trails and climbing the mountains here in Alaska, and maybe out in the middle of Bristol Bay in some clear water, throwing some lines in, catching some fish. Lower 48, though, you can catch me at the Cowboys games. I catch about 4 games a year.
Well, but I will get you the Giant game this year because, there's another partner there that needs to come with you.
Go Birds.
Sounds
All I got
good.
to say.
All right. Everybody got to love something.
That's true. And I love
my
you.
advice for a new CIO, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. That the mouth opens, the ears close. Set yourself as a servant leader. Right? The more people you help in business, the easier your job is going to be, and the quicker you'll establish a good relationship and reputation as a technology practitioner. Some of my best friends are CIOs, and we talk about this in the evening after all the business is done. What makes you successful? And what makes us successful as CIOs is, we're the guys that bring the bullets and the bombs to the fight. We control the nervous system of every business out there. And any executive outside of IT that doesn't understand that, we come to work every day to make sure things work. So at the end of the day, just come in as a warrior that equips business to do business, and you'll be all right.
I love that. Well, guys, I do appreciate it. I feel like we're still sitting at MES in Orlando having the same conversation and just extending it. I appreciate you indulging me on this topic and joining me. I do think that while there are lots of similarities in the businesses that we help support, it doesn't end with the business, it helps with technology. So thank you guys for being those leaders in your organization, for leading us here through this conversation today. I appreciate you, and for everybody watching, I appreciate your time and taking to get to know these three gentlemen. Please reach out to them when you need to, and we'll see you next month on Leading in the Digital Era.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks for joining Leading in the Digital Era, presented by the Institute for Digital Transformation and hosted by Robert Field. Look for new episodes coming to a LinkedIn live session at noon on the second Tuesday of every month. Can't join Robert for the live session? You can catch the replay anytime on our YouTube channel.